Deputy McDonald.
Minister, yesterday you, your party and indeed the government voted full confidence in the Minister for Justice. It's clear that you all believe that Minister Shatter to be a reforming minister, a progressive minister, a just minister, despite the series of debacles over which he has presided. Now, the issues around the administration of justice and An Garda Síochána haven't gone away, but that's not what I wish you to address just now. Today, Minister, I'd like you to explain to me how it is your reforming Minister for Justice refuses to acknowledge the survivors of the Bethany Home, or those who went through the mother and baby homes, or those citizens of this state who were illegally adopted. Yesterday, the 222 infants and children who died of neglect at the Bethany Home were for the first time officially recognised and mourned at a sobering cemetery in Harold's Cross. The state failed in its duty to the care of these children. Minister, in opposition, your party, the Labour Party and Fine Gael, acknowledged this grave injustice and you promised to address it. But it took a very determined campaign on the part of the Bethany survivors to end the appalling indignity of the burial of these children in an unmarked grave. You, your government and your reforming Minister for Justice have flatly and coldly refused the Bethany survivors the dignity of recognition, the justice of a state apology and the decency of access to a redress scheme. And that, Minister, is totally unacceptable. When your government assumed office, amid a fanfare of promises of reform, of transparency and a new way of doing politics, you had an opportunity to end this injustice. But this government, like the last, has turned its back on the Bethany survivors. So, Minister, will this government now finally face up to its responsibility to these citizens? Will it make an official state apology to the survivors, and will you ensure that they have access to a state redress scheme?
Thank you. Minister.
I personally, and I think everybody in this House who has the benefit of living in this more enlightened time than that of our grandparents, automatically and instinctively empathise and sympathise with people who had the experience of being abandoned for whatever reason and placed into childcare homes, which were cold places for any child who could expect to be brought up in a loving environment. The responsibility of the state in relation to the Magdalene laundry survivors and into the victims of residential and institutional abuse was a responsibility where the state, looking back on our own record of our predecessors, found that yes, our forebears in this chamber and the systems were responsible for placing, with the authority of the state, people into institutions which subsequently turned out to be places of extraordinary abuse, and we are all familiar with that. I have to say, Deputy, and I've had some experience in this regard, that the government has not been satisfied that the people who were placed in the Bethany homes and who had a very difficult and harsh experience, which nobody can excuse, the government is not satisfied that agents of the state were responsible for placing those people into those homes. Well, it's a dispute, Deputy, through the Chair. It is a dispute. The principle stands if sufficient and satisfactory evidence, conclusive, in form similar to that of other institutions, where residential response or where a response has been made, if such evidence can be convincingly brought forward, then the government is of course prepared to look at it. But so far we have not been convinced.
Deputy McDonald.
Thank you, Count Corla. Minister, I don't accept as an excuse the fact that Ireland back in the day was a harsh and a cold place, although that is true. That is absolutely true. The Bethany Home, as you know, was a maternity home, a children's home and a place of detention for women. You know, as I know, that the Bethany Home on Orwell Road in Rathgar was subject to inspection under the Registration of Maternity Homes Act 1934. You know, as I know, that this state in the Department of Local Government and Public Health inspectors have records cataloguing the deficiencies, defects and neglect in that home. You know all of this. There is a state record in terms of the neglect and the abuse. It's there. It's evidential. It is there for you. And you know, Minister, because you knew on the opposition benches, all of you know that the state failed these children. It's not simply a matter, Minister, of who placed the children in these homes. The issue is the failure of the state to oversee adequate and proper standards and to secure the safety of those citizens in that home. You know this.
Question, please.
The evidence is there. The evidence has been presented to your government. And I ask you now in a spirit of justice for these survivors, that you very quickly address the issue, recognise their experience, having viewed the evidence, acknowledge it, apologise on behalf of the state for it, and allow them access to a redress scheme. Finally, Ceann Comhairle, and Minister, you're aware of this too, as it happens, the Bethany Home in Rathgar catered for the most part for children from the Protestant tradition. And there is a deep hurt within survivors because they believe that they have been ignored by the state.
Thank you.
But doubly because they feel in some measure that they have been set aside because they came from a minority faith. It is absolutely essential that we do the right thing for these survivors, that we recognise their experience and we put to rest any concern that they may have had, whatever about the old Ireland, that in the new Ireland, that there is any form of discrimination against any citizen on the basis of their religious beliefs.
Minister.
I thank the Deputy for raising this matter, and I think along with most people in this House, if not everybody, would share much of the sentiments that you've expressed. I am prepared to request the Department to look again, the Department of Justice to look again at the information and to see if something analogous to or comparable to that of victims of institutional residential abuse or indeed in the Magdalens can provide the basis for some reaching out and some redress. And that's all I can say at this point in time.
Thank you. Deputy